I don't usually talk about what happened to me. People look at me now, tailored suit, heels that click like confidence on marble floors, the kind of woman who runs meetings instead of sitting quietly through them, and they assume my story has always looked like this. But silk blouses and polished smiles hide things. Scars, both visible and invisible. Mine just happened to start with a prank that went too far. The city stretched out beneath my office window, a scatter of lights against the dusk. I sipped the last of my coffee, letting the bitter warmth ground me, when my phone buzzed against the desk. I almost didn't pick it up. I was reviewing contracts for tomorrow's presentation, but something about the name flashing across the screen stopped me cold. My brother. We hadn't spoken in years. Not since the day his laughter echoed in my ears while I lay on the ground, unable to move, begging my parents to believe me. They told me I was being dramatic, that it was just a fall. Just nerves. But the MRI later had left the doctor speechless. I stared at his name, my thumb hovering over accept. My pulse quickened, not from fear, but from the storm of memories I'd tried to bury. The little girl who once begged for their attention was gone. But the woman I'd become? She was ready. I was 16 the day everything changed. It was one of those sticky summer afternoons when the air felt heavy enough to drink. My brother, Jason, had been restless, loud, the kind of energy that usually ended with me being the punchline. I should have known better than to follow him out to the backyard when he called my name, but some part of me still wanted to be included. He grinned, eyes sparkling with mischief, as he held up the garden hose like a sword. "Come on, it's just a game," he said. It wasn't. The next few seconds are etched into me like a scar. He shoved me, harder than I expected, laughing as I stumbled. My foot caught on the slick edge of the patio, and suddenly I was weightless, falling. The world tilted, time stretched. My back hit the ground with a crack that stole the air from my lungs. I tried to move, tried to scream, but my body wouldn't listen. Jason's laughter rang in my ears until he saw my face. Panic flickered in his eyes, but by then my parents were already rushing out, voices sharp with frustration. "Stop being dramatic," my mother snapped as I gasped, tears streaming. My father's shadow loomed over me, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Get up. You're fine." But I wasn't fine. My legs tingled with a numbness that terrified me. My hands shook as I reached for them, desperate for proof that I still belonged in my own body. They didn't see it, or maybe they refused to. To them, I was just the sensitive daughter, the one who always made things bigger than they were. Their words stung more than the pain radiating up my spine. That night, when I lay in bed with fire shooting through my nerves, I clutched the silver bracelet my grandmother had given me the year before. "Strength isn't about proving them wrong," she'd whispered when she fastened it around my wrist. "It's about proving yourself right." Her voice became my anchor, even when the doctors confirmed something my family hadn't wanted to believe. Even when I realized I'd have to fight alone. I was paralyzed, yes, but I wasn't powerless. Not forever. That was the day I stopped being their fragile little girl. That was the day I quietly promised myself. One day, they would see me. Rebuilding my life didn't start with some grand epiphany. It started in small, painful fragments. Physical therapy sessions where I learned to breathe through the agony of muscles that felt like strangers. Nights staring at textbooks with tears blurring the words because I couldn't focus past the throbbing in my spine. Days where the only victory was sitting up without feeling like the room was spinning. I wanted to give up. God, I wanted to so many times. But I kept hearing my grandmother's words, that soft, steady whisper. Strength isn't about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. At first, I told no one about the therapy, the tutoring sessions I saved up for, the certifications I chased online. To my parents, I was just their delicate daughter, tucked away at college, but surely barely scraping by. They didn't ask questions, and I didn't offer answers. Silence became my shield. Then came Ms. Carter. She was a professor, sharp-eyed and unapologetic, the kind of woman who walked into a room and made space bend around her. She noticed me lingering after class, asked why I sat in the back with my laptop instead of raising my hand. I almost lied, but something in her gaze demanded honesty. When I told her about the accident, about the numbness, the MRI, the way my family brushed it off, she didn't look away. She didn't pity me. She said 6 words that still live in my chest. Your mind isn't paralyzed. Use it. From then on, she became my mentor. She pushed me harder than anyone else, introducing me to opportunities one never would have dared to reach for. I interned at firms where no one knew my past, where my worth was measured in ideas, not in the limp I tried to disguise. The journey wasn't glamorous. I worked nights at a coffee shop, typing research papers between customers. I lived off instant noodles while studying for certifications that drained my savings. But each little victory, passing an exam, nailing a presentation, getting my first real paycheck, felt like reclaiming pieces of myself. The first time I signed a consulting contract worth more than my father made in a month, I cried in the bathroom, clutching my grandmother's bracelet. Not because of the money, but because I had done it alone. I didn't post photos of my office, didn't brag about the firms calling me for advice. My family still thought I was just getting by. Let them. There was a strange comfort in knowing they underestimated me. It gave me room to grow without their shadow looming over me. What they didn't know was that each sleepless night, each grueling step forward, was building something bigger than any of us could have imagined. And I was just getting started. It happened on a Sunday. The kind of day when the city slows down, when the streets outside my high-rise seem quieter, like they know something is about to shift. I hadn't invited them. They called, saying they were in town, and before I could protest, they were already on their way up. My parents. And Jason. I stood in my office, smoothing the sleeves of my cream silk blouse, willing myself to stay calm. The space reflected me in ways words couldn't. Shelves lined with books on strategy and law, art I'd bought on trips abroad, floor-to-ceiling windows spilling light onto a mahogany desk large enough to command attention. Behind me, awards gleamed, testaments to late nights and sacrifices no one but me would ever fully understand. The elevator dinged. My heart thudded, but my heels carried me forward, each click against the marble floor deliberate, controlled. When the doors opened, their expressions were exactly what I had expected, confusion melting into disbelief. My mother's eyes darted around the lobby, drinking in the polished decor. My father's mouth parted slightly, as if he was trying to reconcile this image with the daughter he had dismissed years ago. And Jason, he froze, his reflection caught in the glass, eyes wide. "This is yours?" my father asked, his voice rough. "Yes," I said simply. The silence was thick, broken only by the soft hum of the city outside. I let them wander, let them trace their fingers over the edge of the conference table, let their eyes linger on the framed contract that bore my name in bold print. Finally, I walked to the credenza and pulled open a drawer. My hand brushed against the envelope that held the MRI report, the one that had once left a doctor speechless. I turned and set it on the table between us. "You said I was being dramatic," I began, my voice even, steady. "You told me to get up, to stop pretending. But the truth was written here, long before I found the strength to write my own future." They didn't move. My mother's hand fluttered to her lips, trembling. Jason shifted, guilt etched into every line of his face. "The prank you thought was harmless left me paralyzed," I continued, each word sharp with clarity. "You laughed. You doubted. But this," I tapped the envelope lightly, "proved I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't weak. I wasn't dramatic. I was broken. And I fixed myself." The weight of the moment pressed down on all of us. My father sank into one of the leather chairs, his gaze cast downward. My mother's eyes glossed with tears. Jason finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "I didn't know. I didn't think." "No," I cut in, calm but firm. "You didn't think. None of you did." I let the silence stretch, then I gestured around us. "But while you ignored me, while you doubted me, I built this. Brick by brick, deal by deal, sleepless night by sleepless night. I became someone you never thought I could be." They had no words, and for once I didn't need them to. The power in that silence was mine. For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the muted thrum of traffic far below, as if the city itself was holding its breath. I stood by the window, fingers grazing the cool glass, my reflection staring back at me. Not the fragile girl they remembered, but the woman I had fought to become. When I turned back, I saw it clearly, shame in my father's eyes, regret pooling in my mother's, and guilt etched across Jason's face like an open wound. "You came here expecting what?" I asked softly. "A broken girl begging for your approval? Someone you could still dismiss with a single word?" My father shifted uncomfortably. We thought maybe you'd need help." I almost laughed. Help. The word stung, not because I needed it, but because when I had needed it most, it was nowhere to be found. I stepped closer, my heels striking the marble like a gavel. "You want to be in my life again? Fine. But there are conditions." Their heads snapped up. "Jason," I said first, my voice firm but not cruel. "You don't get to hide behind jokes anymore. If you want a relationship with me, you start with accountability. Apologize. Not just with words, but with actions. Be better than the boy who thought cruelty was comedy." He swallowed hard, nodding, but I didn't linger. My gaze shifted to my mother. "You called me dramatic. You silenced my pain when I needed you most. If you want to stay, you need to stop dismissing what you don't understand. Learn to listen, not just to me, but to anyone who trusts you with their truth." Tears slipped down her cheeks, and she pressed a hand to her mouth as if to keep from sobbing aloud. Finally, I turned to my father. "And you? You taught me strength was standing tall, but when I was on the ground, you couldn't see me. If you want to earn your place here, you'll have to drop the pride. No more pretending you know best. Sometimes strength is admitting when you were wrong." He flinched, the words cutting deeper than I expected, but he didn't argue. Not this time. I straightened, breathing in the silence that followed. "I'm not shutting you out, but I won't bend myself into the girl you remember. The woman standing here has boundaries, and if you cross them, the door closes again. Permanently." The room was heavy with unspoken truths, but for the first time, I felt no weight on my chest. I wasn't begging for their love, their belief, their validation. I was offering them a choice, one they would have to earn. And that choice, for once, was entirely mine. In the weeks that followed, I watched something I never thought I'd see. Change. Not perfect, not immediate, but real. Jason showed up to my office one morning with a folded letter. He couldn't look me in the eye as he handed it over, but his voice cracked when he said, "I'm sorry." The words on the page were clumsy, uneven, but honest. It wasn't enough to erase the past, but it was a start. My mother began calling, not to pry or judge, but to listen. The first time she said, "Tell me how you're really feeling," my throat tightened. For years, I had begged for that sentence. Hearing it now was like balm on an old wound. And my father, proud, unyielding father, surprised me most. At dinner one evening, he pushed aside his plate, folded his hands, and said, "I was wrong." Just 3 words, but they carried the weight of every silence, every dismissal, every time he had turned away when I needed him. I didn't forgive them overnight. Healing isn't that neat. But as I sat in my office late one evening, city lights flickering like stars below, I looked down at the silver bracelet circling my wrist. My grandmother's words echoed back to me. Strength isn't about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. And I had. Not by erasing the pain, but by transforming it. Not by silencing my scars, but by letting them remind me who I became because of them. My family was learning. Slowly, painfully. But so was I, learning that I could hold my boundaries and still leave space for compassion. That I could be strong without being cold. That forgiveness didn't mean surrendering the power I had earned. As I closed my laptop and leaned back in my chair, I whispered the truth I wished that 16-year-old girl could have heard as she lay on the ground, numb and afraid. You were never dramatic. You were always stronger than they knew. And with that, I smiled, a woman whole, unbroken, and finally seen.